Hey guys, tonight we begin with something soft, yet weighted with centuries of power and expectation. You aren't just anyone tonight. You are someone the history books rarely understand, but always mention. You are a royal mistress, and no, that title doesn't mean what most people think it does. You don't lounge on velvet divans, sipping wine while harpists play just for you. Your life, from the moment you open your eyes, is complicated, and not in a cute, mysterious way, more like in a suffocating, gilded cage with no doorknob kind of way. Congratulations, you've just woken up in 17th century France. The palace is cold. Not cute cold, bone-deep stone wall cold. Your luxurious bed has 4 posters and delicate linens, yes, but that mattress, it's lumpy, stuffed with horsehair and political tension. You're not alone in your chambers. Quiet. Footsteps shuffle in your maid, of course. She's seen everything, so has the other one. And the third. You're watched before your eyes even fully open. You stretch a little, but carefully. Your nightgown slips down your shoulder as the draft cuts across your skin. You can hear the bells from the courtyard chapel, soft, distant. Morning is beginning, and with it, your performance. Because being a royal mistress isn't about sleeping in. It's about being awake before the rest of court can talk about you. The gossip moves faster than the sun rises. And today, just like every day, your real job starts the moment your eyes open. You pull yourself from the warmth of the bed. It's heavy with perfume and secrecy. The sheets are embroidered with tiny golden threads, but the weight of them isn't. What makes it hard to move it's knowing that every single day might be the one where the king doesn't send for you. Or worse, that he does, but he doesn't look at you quite the same. That your rivals have whispered something clever and cruel in his ear. The fire in the hearth has long gone out. The marble floor is icy as your bare feet touch down. Your maid hands you slippers, warmed under her apron. You thank her with a nod, because affection is dangerous. Servants gossip too. You are kindness when watched, steel when alone. Your dressing robe, as always, is silk-dyed in a shade reserved for those near the crown. But the threads tug at your skin, and the neckline was designed more for public imagination than for warmth. Everything you wear has a purpose. You don't dress for comfort. You dress for politics. You are a billboard for status, desire, and proximity to power. Now, the door creaks. You freeze for a heartbeat. Is it him? No. Just another maid. This one holds a tray. Weak tea. A single roll. You don't eat much in the morning, not just because court etiquette expects restraint, but because eating too much makes you feel heavy, and you need to be quick, not just physically, mentally. You sit by the window, which is more decorative than practical. The glass is rippled, casting strange shapes into the room. Through it, the garden stretches a place you may walk later, always with others. Always observed. There is no such thing as alone in the palace. Even when alone, you are seen, imagined, described. Here's the part they don't show in portraits. You are tired, not from physical labor like a peasant, but from the emotional math you must do before speaking every sentence. The court is a battlefield. You are its ornament and its soldier. Historians still debate whether most royal mistresses wielded real political power, or if they were just symbolic comforters to lonely kings. But the truth sits somewhere in the in-between. You influence decisions, not by decree, but by suggestion. Not in the throne room, but in the quiet moments afterward. And influence, as you know, is a dangerous currency. The women before you, some became duchesses, others disappeared into convents. One was poisoned, one just vanished. No one talks about her. You take another sip of tea. Bitter. Everything is these days. Even compliments at court come laced with venom. You're not yet 30, but you've learned to hear the threats hidden in sweet smiles. Your maid brings in today's gown, pale blue silk. The king mentioned once, months ago, that he liked that color. You remember? You always remember. As they help you dress, you stare at your own reflection in the Miraran imported silver glass from Venice. Your face is perfect, not because of luck, because of effort. Lotions, powders, and hours of sitting still, while others work on you like you're a canvas that must please a single, temperamental artist, the king. And yet, you blink, a fine line near your eyes. You know the other mistresses saw it too, last night. The Duchess looked at you a second too long. She nosed out another layer of perfume. It masks the fear. The footsteps in the hallway grow louder, then pause. Your heart skips once, twice. It's him. Or maybe it's someone with a message from him. Both are equally terrifying. You stand, straighten, smile, soft, submissive, serene, and the day begins. You don't greet the king. You're presented. That's the word they use. Presented. As if you're not a person, but a painting, a rare gem, a fragile luxury. Your maid whispers. He's in the outer salon. You nod, silently rehearsing. Your face, not too eager, not too distant. Just the right kind of sparkle, like someone pleased, but not desperate. You glide, not walk, glide across the corridor. Every creak of the parquet beneath your slippered feet is louder than it should be. You pass tapestries depicting ancient battles, gods and monsters, and, somewhere in between, your reflection catches in a golden-framed mirror. You remind yourself to breathe. The king is seated, not standing. That matters. If he were standing, it might mean he's impatient, or irritated, or ready to leave. But he's lounging, with that lazy smile he reserves for when he's trying to appear amused and mysterious. The same one that made you fall into his gravity years ago. Ma chère, he says, and you curtsy low, controlled, like you've practiced 1,000 times. He doesn't ask how you slept. He never does. He talks about the weather, his breakfast, the hunt he plans to join this afternoon. You smile. You laugh 3 times, lightly, as if you just can't help yourself. You offer no opinions, just fascination. You've learned this game. You are not here to be interesting. You're here to be interested. He talks about court tension, some minister upsetting another, a minor scandal involving foreign ambassadors. He says he dreams of escaping it all, living quietly with you, but you know. He said the same thing to the last mistress, maybe even the one before that. It's not a lie, it's a fantasy, and fantasy is currency in this world. Historians still argue whether kings truly loved their mistresses, or simply enjoyed the illusion of emotional intimacy without consequence. You sit and wonder, does it matter? Your hand rests on the armrest, fingers gently curled. He places his hand atop yours, warm, heavy. You don't flinch. This is the role. You are not his equal. You are his chosen. There's a difference. After a few more pleasantries, he stands. You rise quickly, avoiding any hint of annoyance or confusion. His departure is swift, and you're left behind in the salon filled with perfumed silence and a low-burning fireplace. He doesn't kiss you goodbye. He never does in daylight. You sit for a moment, spine still straight, before the valet bows and gestures for your exit. The king's mistress must never linger where she's not the center of the room. Back in your chambers, your ladies in waiting await your mood. If you seem pleased, they will gossip accordingly. If you look disappointed, they will magnify your sadness and twist it into weakness by supper. So you smile again. Your face is starting to ache. Now comes dressing for the day. Again, the royal salon was one costume. Now, you must switch into something appropriate for morning promenades and public appearances. You're draped in brocade, cinched at the waist, adorned with gems that weigh more than your breakfast. You cannot dress yourself. That would be scandalous. You must be undressed and redressed by other women whose only job is to ensure every ribbon is perfect, every sleeve correctly puffed, every hem just above the floor. You're reminded again, your body is not yours. It's maintained by a team, owned by rumor, regulated by expectation. They apply more rouge to your cheeks, a little kohl around your eyes. You look lovely, you must. Even on days you feel hollow, you must appear full of light. You step out into the gallery. Courtiers are already mingling. Eyes turn toward you. Some smile, others glance, then look away quickly, too proud or too jealous to meet your gaze for long. You pass the Duchess. She says, charming gown. Did the king choose it? Her tone is sugary, but you know better. You tilt your head. He hasn't seen it yet. You reply sweetly, meaning, he'll like it before you ever wear it. Meaning, I'm still in his head before you are. These exchanges are battles with no weapons, just words sharpened by experience. Outside, in the garden, you walk slowly, flanked by your attendants. Peacocks strut beside gravel paths. The flowers are arranged just so, but none of this is for peace. This is performance. You're here to be seen, observed by ministers, noblewomen, the queens, spies. Yes, of course there are spies, always, even in the lavender bushes. You sit on a carved marble bench. Your maid hands you a fan, not because it's warm, because fanning yourself gives your hands something to do, and because it lets you hide tiny expressions behind a silk shield. A nobleman approaches. He bows too low, too long. He compliments your intelligence, your sparkling wit. You nod. You've never spoken more than 2 sentences to him before. He isn't talking to you. He's talking through you to the king, hoping his flattery will be passed on. It won't be. You talk about books, poetry, a visiting Italian painter. The topics are carefully curated. You must sound educated, but not too opinionated. Curious but not political. Gentle but not naive. You are always towing the line between desirable and disposable. A breeze picks up. Your ladies-in-waiting rush to steady your hair and cloak. You laugh lightly. Such attention. You murmur. They smile, but their eyes are calculating. Did you know some royal mistresses kept secret diaries? A few have survived just fragments, scribbled in hidden drawers, beneath laced handkerchiefs, or stitched into the lining of corsets. Most are gone, burned, hidden, or stolen by servants who sold them for coin. You wonder if your words will survive, or if you'll become one more face in a dusty portrait. Your name whispered only in footnotes and candlelit scandals. Another hour passes. You return indoors. A servant whispers. The queen requests your presence. You freeze. The queen never requests. She summons, and just like that, the rest of your day changes. You follow the servant down a corridor that smells faintly of lemon oil and something older stone dust, perhaps, or the quiet tension of lives lived carefully. Each step toward the queen's chambers is measured, not because you're nervous enough. You're always nervous, but because arriving too quickly looks desperate, too slow, disrespectful. You pace yourself like a heartbeat. The queen's antechamber is guarded by 2 silent men in crimson. You nod. They don't move. Just open the heavy wooden door with the kind of indifference that says they've seen many women like you come and go. Some smiling, some trembling, some never seen again. Inside, the air changes. The Queen of France sits in a tall-backed chair, velvet pooling around her feet. She does not rise. Of course not. You curtsy lower than usual, lower than with the king. This is the woman who, on parchment, is your superior. But here, in this room, it's more complicated. Madame, she says, not looking up from her embroidery. How lovely of you to come. You smile. Your Majesty is most gracious. And thus, the dance begins. The queen is dressed plainly by royal standards. Her jewelry is minimal today. Her hair arranged not for attention, but for control. Everything about her is deliberate. She wants you to see she doesn't need the sparkle you wear, that her crown is heavier than your perfume. She gestures to the seat across from her. You sit carefully, spine tall, legs together. You must never slouch in front of the queen. It's said that one mistress once leaned too far back and was never invited again. No one knows what happened to her. The silence stretches. Then, how's your health? She asks. It's not a question, it's a test. You answer sweetly, blessedly well. I hope your Majesty's sleep was undisturbed. The queen finally looks up. Her eyes are cold but curious. This isn't the first time she's hosted you, and each time, she learns a little more, or pretends to. Historians still debate whether royal queens tolerated mistresses out of political necessity or simmering resentment. But here, in this room, you know, it's both. She can't remove you, but she can make you feel unwelcome enough to wish you were gone. She sips from a small porcelain cup. There are rumors, she says. You nod politely. There always are. A pause, a stare. She wants to see if you flinch. You don't. I'm told the king has been generous lately. Your necklace burns at your throat. You know what she means. A new brooch, an extra horse in your stable, a whisper of property outside Paris. All tokens, all noticed. I am humbled. By His Majesty's kindness, you say, voice like velvet, and then, the Queen smiles. Just a little. I trust you remember your place, Madame. There it is, the heart of it. She doesn't need to shout or threaten. She just needs to remind you, you are here because she allows it, or at least, because she tolerates it. Always, Your Majesty. That's the answer. The only one. She returns to her embroidery. You remain seated for a few moments, pretending to admire the delicate floral work in her lap. You wonder what she's stitching. Is it a symbol, a warning, or just something to keep her hands busy while her mind plots? Eventually, she waves a hand. Dismissal. You rise, curtsy again, and walk, out backward, never turning your back to the Queen, not until you're beyond the door, where your breath can finally escape. Back in the corridor, you feel your shoulders drop half an inch. Not enough for anyone to notice. Just enough for you. You head to your chambers, but now the mood is changed. The Queen has seen you, assessed you, and tomorrow, every courtier will whisper, "What did she say? What did she mean?" Already, a page is waiting with a folded note. You take it. No seal, just a mark of crescent moon. You open it slowly. You looked beautiful today. The handwriting is unmistakable. The king, he knew. He sent you to her like a chess piece, a test, and now he rewards you, or toys with you. Hard to tell the difference. You crumple the note and tuck it in your sleeve. Some mistresses framed these notes. Others burned them immediately. You keep them somewhere secret, in a book with false pages. You've learned to hoard words, like treasure. In this palace, they're more valuable than diamonds. You sit by the window again, staring out at the gray clouds rolling in. A storm is coming, literally or figuratively. You're never quite sure anymore. Later, you'll be invited to dine. You'll sit near the king, but not too near. You'll be watched by everyone, and truly seen by no one. But for now, you breathe, alone. Briefly, a servant knocks. The tailor has arrived, Madame. He brings the new gown. Of course, the gown for next week's masked ball, where you'll pretend not to know who everyone is, even though the masks are thin and the lies thinner. You rise again, because the day is far from over, and you're only just starting to play. By mid-morning, the palace buzzes with its own rhythm-clipped heels against marble, rustling skirts, and the low hum of secrets. You return to your chambers, but rest is not an option. The tailor waits, already unfolding bolts of silk across your chaise lounge, as if he owns the place. In a way, he does. A royal mistress is only as powerful as she appears in. Appearance is a full-time profession. The tailor greets you with a bow so deep, it nearly folds him in half. "Madame," he says, "I have brought the rose damask just arrived from Lyon." He gestures, as if unveiling a masterpiece. The fabric glows in the weak morning light blush, pink with threads of gold woven through like trapped sunlight. Beautiful, expensive, and utterly uncomfortable. You nod. Let's begin. Your ladies-in-waiting help you undress. Again, this will be the third outfit of the day, and it's barely noon. Arms lift, corsets unlace, chemises rustle. The process is slow, not because it must be, but because it gives everyone time to look, to evaluate. Your waist, your skin, your expression. In the world of mistresses, every thread tells a story and every inch of you must be part of the narrative. The tailor begins pinning the new bodice. His fingers are fast, clever, impersonal. He doesn't look at your face. That would be a mistake. He works like an artist, sculpting politics into cloth. Historians still argue whether mistresses dictated fashion or merely followed trends. But, from where you stand half-dressed and half-decorated, you know the truth. You are fashion. What you wear today will be whispered about by evening, sketched tomorrow, and copied by next week. The sleeves are too tight. You say nothing. A royal mistress does not complain. You shift your shoulders slightly, and the tailor notices, adjusts. He knows the rules too. As he pins the hem, one of your ladies leans in. The Duchess wore emerald last night. A bold choice. You hum in response. You know what she's really saying. Emeralds are a claim, a signal that she feels secure in the king's eye. She's daring you to respond. You will, not with words. With silk, the gown slowly takes shape. No zippers, no stretch, everything stitched and tailored by hand, designed to fit you and only you. Even breathing feels optional. You look in the mirror. The rose damask glows, but your face, you tilt your head. Something's missing. Where's the sapphire comb, you ask? A maid rushes to fetch it. It's your signature today. Blue against pink, a statement. Not quite rebellious, but far from passive. Once the dress is fitted, you sit at your vanity. The hairstylist arrives, a wisp of a man with powdered fingers and a nervous smile. He starts pulling, teasing, sculpting your hair into elaborate coils. You wince, just once. That's all you're allowed. The conversation in the room shifts. Someone mentions a new opera. Someone else sighs about a delayed shipment of Venetian lace. All of it is polite noise. Background texture to the real story, your transformation. By the time your hair is done, you are unrecognizable from the girl who woke up in cold sheets just hours ago. Now, you are shimmering, controlled. A vision of what every courtier wants to be, and what every rival wants to destroy. A fringe detail. One of your attendants, barely 16, is caught staring too long at your necklace, at your posture, at your position. You make a mental note. She'll either try to be you or replace you. The palace lunch bell rings. You don't rush. That's the privilege of being desired. People wait for you, and if they don't, they notice when you arrive late. You glide down the hallways again, your skirt whispering secrets as you walk. The salon is already half full. Ministers, barons, a few foreign guests, all pretending not to look. You choose a seat, just slightly closer to the king's end of the table than etiquette allows. A calculated breach. Not too bold, but enough for them to whisper later. Lunch is served. Roasted fowl, soft cheeses, sugared fruits. The food is fine. The company, less so. One courtier account with too many rings and too few thoughts in Madame, he says. They say you have the ear of the king. You smile. Only one ear. I must try harder. Laughter circles the table. Light, superficial. But the count's smile slips a little. He thought he had you. He DN single quotes too. Everything is performance. You sip your wine. You dab your lips. You never drop your guard. The conversation turns to politics. Taxes. The colonies. The latest scandal involving the Duke of something or other. You listen carefully, but contribute little. A mistress with opinions is dangerous. A mistress who listens, useful. Historians still argue whether mistresses acted as informal advisors or were simply ornamental. But the truth is, you are the sounding board, the filter, the whisperer, not in public, never in writing, but in the quiet moments after. Dessert arrives, candied violets and honeyed almonds. You take just one. Every bite is a statement. Appetite, like emotion, must be managed. The king doesn't speak to you during lunch, but he looks. Once, twice, long enough. You've done your job. As the meal ends, guests rise slowly, chairs scraping, like rustling paper. The women retreat to one salon, the men to another. You pause. Wait for someone to suggest you join them. They do. Of course they do. You walk into the next room. The Duchess is already there, pouring tea. She hands you a cup with a smile. Too sweet. No sugar, she asks. None, you reply. I find sweetness dulling. Another glance. Another silent jab. The afternoon stretches ahead. More conversations. More maneuvering. More smiling until your cheeks ache. You are exhausted, but you are winning. Your shoes click softly against the marble floor. Another hall. Another duty. Another day where you play your part like a performer stuck in a play, written by people who will never know your name. You are on your way to fulfill your official obligations, though, let's be honest. The word official here is flexible. You're not a noblewoman with lands or a title. You're not the queen with divine right or a council of advisors. You're a royal mistress, and with that title comes responsibilities, just not authority. You arrive in the grand salon where the king's morning audiences are held. You're not invited, of course. You simply happen to be passing through. Everyone knows the game. You arrive fashionably late enough to seem casual, early enough to still be noticed. Ministers bow. Some smile, some don't. The king is seated on a small, throne-like chair, reading a letter, pretending not to see you, but he does. Your job now is subtle. You stand a few paces away, not too close to draw comment, not too far to be forgotten. A court painter might call you elegant. A rival would say ornamental. You are the wallpaper of royal power, always present, rarely acknowledged, and never allowed to peel. Suddenly, the king waves over his finance minister. They begin discussing grain tariffs and river taxes, topics far beyond your official concern, yet you listen intently, because tomorrow, or next week, the king might ask your opinion, not because you're qualified, but because he's bored, or curious, or testing you. You can never afford to be uninformed. Historians still argue whether royal mistresses truly shaped policy, or merely echoed opinions fed to them. The reality: you remember which nobleman owns which port. You memorize who stood next to whom at the last hunting party. You notice the twitch in the minister's jaw when the word war is mentioned. You know things, but you say nothing. Once the morning audience ends, the king rises, thanks his counselors, and leaves. So do you discreetly, following a different corridor, because to walk beside him would be presumptuous. But your real work begins just minutes later. A letter is slipped into your gloved hand, an invitation to the Queen's charitable tea, another to attend a musical rehearsal for the visiting prince, a third to appear at the afternoon embroidery circle, where no one embroiders and everyone interrogates. These aren't suggestions. These are commands dressed as pleasantries. You're not just a royal favorite. You're a symbol. Your presence at these functions tells the entire palace that you're still in favor, still untouchable, still powerful even if you feel powerless inside. At the charity event, you're seated next to a duchess you despise. She asks if you've read the new Italian sonnet collection. You smile. Several times. I found the metaphors a little obvious. She blinks. 1 point for you. The queen enters. Everyone stands. You bow. She acknowledges you with a glance colder than the wine. The tea is poured. Conversation turns to orphans, donations, grain shortages. You nod sympathetically. Promise to speak with the king, though you never will. That's not your lane. But saying so reminds them you could, if you wanted. Later, at the music rehearsal, the young prince performs a clumsy flute solo. You clap politely, as does everyone else. But you're watched the whole time, not because your opinion matters, but because your expression can influence the king's mood later. Even silence is political. By the time you return to your rooms, it's already past 4 in the afternoon. You've spoken little, promised much, and decided nothing. You're exhausted, but not from labor, from performance. You remove your gloves, fingers stiff from holding teacups and fans all day. Another gown change, another hair adjustment. Your maid's hands are gentle. You don't thank her. You can't appear soft, not even here. A messenger knocks. There's a diplomatic dinner this evening. Your lady-in-waiting whispers. The king expects you to attend. Of course he does. Another corset, another gown. This one silver gray, threaded with pearls. A subtle signal of restraint, refinement. Not too bold, not too seductive. It's a tightrope, always. At dinner, the foreign ambassador eyes you with a curious smile. His wife pretends not to look. The king introduces you casually. using only your given name. You're not official, remember, just present. Always present. The ambassador toasts the peace treaty. You raise your glass. Smile. No one asks your opinion on the treaty. No one ever will. But later, if the king leans in and murmurs, "What did you think of him?" You must be ready. Was his voice sincere? Was his smile real? Did he sweat during the speech? You notice everything. That's your real job. Because when night falls, and the court retires to their chambers, and the wine is forgotten, and the treaties are folded into drawers, he will turn to you. He'll ask about everyone, and you will answer. Softly, carefully. Because your words, though unofficial, carry more weight than most edicts. Still, none of it is your power. You're not listed on any documents. You hold no seal. You give no orders. You are influence without credit, presence without recognition, and the moment he tires of you, it's all gone. Night at the palace is not quiet. It's hushed. Candles flicker low in wall sconces. Perfume hangs heavy in the arrows. Myrrh, orange blossom. Your chambers are warm, bathed in golden glow. The fire in the hearth cracks softly. A maid brushes your hair in long, slow strokes. You are preparing, not for rest. For him, there's a knock. You don't respond. You don't need to. The maid opens the door silently, and the king steps in. He never waits for permission. His footsteps are soft. He wears no crown now, no cloak, no visible authority. But you feel the weight of it all the same. Every step closer is a reminder. This is not a man. This is a ruler who has chosen you tonight. His eyes rest on you. Your hair is undone, falling around your shoulders. The sheer nightgown they picked for you is loose, meant to suggest innocence, but stitched for seduction. You rise. He does not speak. He doesn't need to. His hand reaches your cheek, thumb brushing along your jaw. Soft, thoughtful, like he almost cares. Almost. He kisses you. There's no passion at first, just routine. Lips moving like memory. Hands unfastening your gown like he's done it 100 times. Because he has. Because that's your place. Silk slides off your shoulders. The cool air touches your skin before he does. When his mouth finds your collarbone, you close your eyes. Not because you're lost in pleasure, but because it's easier than looking him in the face. He is not cruel. That would be easier. He is gentle, thoughtful, too thoughtful. Every movement choreographed to make you feel wanted, even when you know you're not. Because here, in this candlelit silence, you are not a woman. You are a reward. The night moves on, breath by breath, skin to skin, his body against yours, claiming, taking but gently. Like a thief apologizing. You respond. Of course you do. That is the role. You kiss back. You arch your back. You moan softly, the way you know he likes. You whisper his name. You pretend it matters. You pretend you matter. When it's over, he doesn't speak. He lies beside you, arm draped across your waist, his breath already slowing into sleep. You stare at the ceiling. This is intimacy without intimacy, flesh without freedom, because tomorrow he could choose someone else. You've seen it before. The newest girl from the provinces, the one with sunlit hair or a different laugh. He will spot her in a garden or at a ball, and slowly, quietly, she'll begin to appear at dinners, in the audience chamber, at his side, and then in his bed, your bed. What happens then? You don't ask. You never ask. You already know. The royal mistress is not fired. She fades. Her rooms grow quieter. Her gowns stop arriving. Invitations dry up. Whispers start. Is she still in favor? Have you seen her? I hear he prefers the new one, and one day, your name is no longer mentioned. That's what makes tonight more cruel than tender. He holds you like you're irreplaceable, but everyone is replaceable. So tomorrow, you'll work harder. Wear the richer gown. Laugh at the right joke. Kiss the right ring. Stay just close enough to be needed, just distant enough not to annoy, because you don't control anything. Not the politics, not the palace, not even your own body. But you'll pretend you do, and that's the cruelest part of all. You think it's just a necklace, a glint of gold, a shimmer of pearls, maybe even a delicate gemstone nestled at the center placed around your neck by the king himself. His fingers brushing your collarbone, his smile slow and unreadable. The room is full of warmth and candles, the air scented with saffron, and for a moment, the gesture feels intimate, a gift just for you. But you're not foolish. You've been in the palace long enough to know that in this world, gifts from kings are not just gifts. They are contracts. Invisible scrolls tied with silken ribbon. The moment that necklace clasps shut behind your neck, you are locked into a silent agreement, one that doesn't require your signature to bind you. The court calls them tokens of affection. But affection, in the language of royalty, is a blade with two edges, and you feel both. One side gleams access, security, elevation. The other cuts expectations, scrutiny. Wait. Tonight, the gift is a necklace. Tomorrow, perhaps a jeweled ring. Then, maybe an estate, a gown from Venice, a private carriage. But each one, no matter how dazzling, comes with its own chain. They don't just adorn you, they anchor you. The court watches every trinket. When you appear in a new silk robe embroidered with dragons, they notice, they whisper, "She's rising." But they don't envy you, not really. They understand the price. For every treasure gifted by royal hands, you owe something. Time, loyalty, secrets, silence, and sometimes, performance. The king invites you to join him at a feast, and you cannot decline not when he's just given you a ruby comb worth a minor fortune. You're expected to laugh at his jokes, flatter his ego, match his pace in dance and diplomacy. You are, essentially, being rented out by the hour, a walking advertisement for royal favor, a smiling marionette stitched into the backdrop of power. But there's more. Some gifts are traps. A ring given in front of the queen too obvious. A cloak delivered publicly, without your asking, suspicious. These are not mistakes. Sometimes the gift is the message. Sometimes it's a test. The king wants to see how you'll react under fire, under jealousy, under suspicion. Will you thank him too quickly? Will you blush and look away? Will you wear it tomorrow in front of the queen's ladies? The court is a theater. The gifts are your costumes. And sometimes, you don't get to pick the role. Let's say the king gives you a small estate in the countryside. Sounds like a dream, right? A place of peace and lavender fields, and stone cottages, and little carved birds on the window ledges. But you're being moved, away from court, away from his bed, out of the story. It's a polite exile. Rest, he says, recover from court life. But it's not about your well-being. It's about repositioning you off the chessboard, because gifts can mean favor, or they can mean closure, and they rarely come with a clear label. You learn to read them like riddles. A sapphire brooch, he's marking you as his, publicly. It's a warning to rivals, and a claim, a pet bird in a gilded cage. Irony, he knows, you're trapped. A box of rare herbs from the east. Perhaps he's testing your knowledge, or seeing who you share it with. Everything is layered, nothing is just nice. Even the food sent to your rooms is a message. A plate of almonds dipped in rose water. He remembers your favorite. Or is he just watching what you eat, checking your appetite, your mood? A sudden shipment of candied figs from Sicily. He knows you haven't had them in months. He knows you're missing home. Or maybe he wants to remind you that you can never truly go back, and the gifts others give you, even more dangerous. If a duke sends you a poem stitched into a tapestry too forward, if the queen's brother sends you a lute watch, you're back. Every act of kindness can be twisted into sedition. You learn to smile, nod, and record everything in your mental ledger. Who sent what, when, Who was watching? Who looked pleased? Who looked threatened? Because gifts don't disappear after you unwrap them. They follow you. They're proof. And if one day the court turns against you, they will. List them all as evidence. She accepted a gold mirror. She flaunted the velvet slippers. She knew what it meant. And you did. You always do. But rejecting gifts, that's its own crime. To turn down a royal present is to offend the king. It's to suggest you're ungrateful, to proud, to principled, none of which endears you to a man surrounded by flatterers. So, you accept that with a bow, a smile, a practiced murmur of thanks, and you add it to your invisible burden. Sometimes you whisper to yourself in the mirror, it's just a necklace, but you know, deep down, you know it's never just a necklace. It's a leash, a chain, a marked dot, and every time you fasten it around your neck, you wonder how long before it tightens. The sun dips behind the stone towers of the palace, casting long golden shadows across the marbled courtyard. As twilight settles in, the air thickens with the scent of roses and roasted meats, mingled with soft strains of music drifting from the banquet hall. And you, still cloaked in your role, still draped in embroidered silks, feel your stomach twist. Because the night isn't just for dancing and wine, it's for performance and power. As one of the king's favorite mistresses, you know the evening's entertainment is never just entertainment. Every laugh, every glance, every toast hides some whispered agenda. This is where alliances are hinted at, rivalries stoked, and decisions quietly set in motion under the gentle haze of candlelight and flattery. The great hall, ablaze with torches and chandeliers, is already humming. Nobles in velvet and brocade, powdered courtiers with fans and feathered masks, fill the room like actors on an ever-changing stage. You descend the staircase slowly, deliberately, your gown flowing like liquid wealth behind you. Your entrance is timed. Everyone notices, and that's the point. You smile as you pass the Duchess with the hawk-like eyes. She nods. You both understand the silent code. Smile in public, strike in private. Behind her sits her niece, barely 17, radiant and fresh, seated suspiciously close to the king's side tonight. You take note, there's always a new face, a new threat. And tonight, she might just be wearing your future. The king is already half into his second goblet. Wine softens his tongue and makes his attention drift. His laughter is loud, his compliments louder. He gestures for you to sit, but it's not next to a midst, 2 seats down. You maintain your composure. This isn't love, it's theater, and the script isn't yours to write. The entertainment begins with lute, music and gestures, buffoons with painted faces and bells that jingle with every exaggerated bow. They dance and tumble, mocking nobles with impunity, because that's their job, to say the unsayable behind the mask of performance. One jokes about a royal bed that changes more than the moon, and the crowd erupts in laughter. You keep your lips pressed shut. You glance at the other women across the table, wives of dukes, daughters of merchants, one foreign princess who never speaks unless spoken to. Each one plays her part. Each one watches the other, calculating, smiles and spoken pleasantries, carefully designed to look harmless. But under every compliment is a dagger, because the banquet table is a battlefield. The food comes in wave-spiced pheasants, stewed figs, sugared almonds, all arranged like still life paintings on silver platters. But you barely taste it. You're too busy deciphering glances. The Lord Chancellor is speaking to the Queen more than usual tonight. Does it mean something? Probably. The steward bows low as he delivers a velvet pouch to the king inside it, likely a gift from the northern dukedom, or a bribe. You know better than to stare. But everything is information, and every person in this room is both witness and player. There's a lull in the room just before the next act. That's when the king whispers to his valet, and you see a small folded note handed off, barely noticed. You recognize the sealets from the chamberlain, and it isn't meant for you. That's when the jealousy stirs again. Not because of the love. You never believed in that. But because access is influence, and influence is survival. Later, there's a masked dance. Everyone in disguise, laughing under silk and feather, pretending not to know each other. But of course you do. The game is to pretend you don't. You're approached by a tall man in a silver mask. He says nothing, just offers his hand. You accept, you dance. The steps are choreographed, predictable, mechanical. But your thoughts race. Is this one of the king's spies? Or a duke testing your favor? Or just some bored nobleman playing at mystery? He leans in and murmurs. The court watches you closely tonight. You tilt your head, as they always do. He doesn't press further. The music ends. He vanishes into the crowd. You're left alone, heart tapping against your corset like a drum. Every gesture tonight matters, even your silences. You return to your seat. The king is laughing again, now with that girl, his new fascination. She fans herself coyly. You clench your hand under the table. One wrong word from her, one misstep from you, and tomorrow you may find your apartments reassigned. Or worse, your name whispered with pity. That's the thing about these evening entertainments. The mask never really comes off. You've heard stories of mistresses who lost favor overnight. One caught frowning during a toast. Another accused of hiding a letter. One dared to speak ill of the queen while drunk, and was exiled by morning. The court forgets fast. The king even faster. Historians still argue whether some mistresses truly held influence after losing the king's heart. Some say they became political players in their own right, maneuvering through strategy and patronage. Others say that once discarded, they simply vanished, replaced, renamed, rewritten out of history. But tonight, you are still in play, still seated close enough to be seen, still wearing the earrings he gave you after last month's private feast, still remembered. A servant brings desert gold dusted figs and honey-drenched pastries. You smile at the sweetness, but all you can taste is salt. You notice two ladies whispering across the room. Their laughter is too loud, their glances too pointed. You're being discussed, assessed. They're wondering if tonight is your last. You sip your wine slowly, hold your posture, let your eyes soften. Everything about you must remain effortless even when it isn't, because behind every gown and goblet, behind every masked joke and half-meant compliment, lies a single truth. Court is war, and tonight's battlefield is candlelit. You don't always see your enemies coming, not because they hide in shadows, but because they smile in silks. You wake up, and one of your maids is already by your side, brushing your hair. Her touch is gentle, her smile obedient. She hums a lullaby you vaguely recognize from your childhood, but her eyes, they don't quite match her song. You know better than to trust expressions in this palace. Here, betrayal doesn't wear a sword, wears satin. Being a royal mistress doesn't just mean winning the king's attention. It means holding on to it, and for every moment that you shine in his gaze, there are a dozen women polishing their own strategies in the corners of the palace. Most of them never say your name aloud, but their eyes track your every step, memorize your every weakness, and prepare their own ascent. Enemies. Oh, they don't come yelling. They arrive with compliments and fresh flowers. They share gossip just a little too eagerly. They warn you about others, all while slipping your secrets out the back door. You've learned to study not just what people say, but how they look at you when you're not speaking. Jealous eyes are easy to miss if you're distracted by a laugh, a dance, or a compliment, but they're always there, watching, waiting. One of the younger serving girls trips as she carries your breakfast tray. A clatter of silver dishes echoes through the room. She's flustered, apologetic, insists it was her clumsiness. But in your world, you wonder, was it an accident? Or a little nudge from someone who wants to make you look careless before the Queen's steward arrives. You help her up, offer a soft word, but inside, you're taking mental notes. Always, historians still argue whether mistresses truly held rivalries with the Queen's ladies, or whether such narratives are embellishments by later gossip writers. But if you've spent a single week in these palace walls, you know, the tension is as real as the embroidery on your sleeves. It's not always shouted. It's subtle, elegant, and razor-sharp. At tonight's banquet, you choose your gown carefully, not just for the king's gaze, but for the message it sends. A little more crimson, because last week, the Duchess from Normandy wore the same shade, and the court couldn't stop talking. A necklace that used to belong to the Queen's cousin feudal, but symbolic. You're not just showing beauty, you're making a statement. I'm still favored, I'm still here, and I know where power pulses. When you enter the hall, the air feels dense with perfume and suspicion. The music floats. The laughter swells, but it's all a curtain. Behind every smile, someone is playing a game. You notice the king whispering with another woman across the hall. Her fan flutters over her face, coyly hiding her mouth. But her eyes flick to you just once. It's not a threat, not yet, but it's a reminder. No one's position is ever truly secure, not even yours. Your maid, the one brushing your hair this morning, just slipped a note under your fan. It's folded tight, scentless, clearly passed by someone who knows the rules. You open it later, alone. It reads, "Beware the mirror in the Queen's corridor. Not everything it reflects is yours anymore." You stare at the ink. The message is vague, maybe meaningless. Or maybe someone's trying to help you, or trick you. One of the oddest facts about life in this court is how much is conveyed through clothing. Historians say that the amount of pearls on a mistress's gown could signify her level of favor. But others argue it was more about who helped her tie the final ribbon, because that indicated alliances, not just beauty. And if your maid helped you choose a gown that made you look too bold or too modest at the wrong time, well, that wasn't just bad fashion, it was social sabotage. You remember one scandal a few months ago. A favorite of the king's was mysteriously served spoiled meat at a private lunch. Not enough to kill her, but enough to make her violently ill during a key diplomatic feast. She lost her color, her wit, her appeal just long enough for another woman to step forward, elegant and radiant. Some blamed the kitchen, but you knew better. Food doesn't choose its moment. People do. So now, you test everything. You sniff the rose water. You taste the bread before the wine. You even switch shawls last minute just to throw off anyone who's watching too closely. Paranoia, maybe. Survival. Definitely. Even the musicians could be part of someone else's plan. If they play your favorite song, it could be a gesture of affection or a cue someone paid them to use to provoke the queen, or another mistress, or even you. And the queen herself. Oh, she's not above the game. She plays it better than most. Her silence can be more cutting than a slap. One night she passed by you and simply said, "Red suits you." For now, it sounded like a compliment. It wasn't. There was once a fringe historian, never mainstream. Mostly dismissed by academics, who claimed that royal maids were often bribed by competing factions within the palace. 1 coin for a rumor, 2 for a schedule, 5 for a misplaced bottle of hair dye, swapped with something less flattering. Fetched? Maybe. But in your world, nothing seems too absurd. You've noticed that whenever you're given a new maid, there's always a little adjustment period. You test her loyalty. She tests your expectations. Some leave quickly, some stay too long. But all of them, every single one, hold keys to your secrets, your safety, your reflection in the eyes of the king. Tonight, as the music rises and dancers twirl in shimmering gowns, you catch your reflection in a mirror. You look radiant, yes, but your gaze is tired, calculating. You know every stitch of your dress, every hidden pin, every glance exchanged in the hall. This is not just a party, it's a battlefield. And you, you're fighting it dressed in pearls and silence. The air is thick, not with heat or cold, but with something far more deep as tension, and you feel it not in your bones, but in your gut, like the hush before a storm, or the pause between the striking of a match and the flare of fire. You've learned to sense these things without looking. In fact, not looking is part of survival, because here, silence is not just expected, it's weaponized. In this gilded cage of a palace, to speak carelessly is to walk barefoot across a floor full of broken porcelain. Every word can cut. Every word can cut. Every whisper might echo in the wrong ear. So instead, you learn to breathe more quietly, to blink slower, to smile without speaking, to vanish, sometimes, while still standing in the room. You weren't always like this. Once, you were full of light chatter and nervous jokes, trying to ease your way into the world of silk-clad court ladies and brocaded whispers. But you quickly learned that those little jokes were filed away, stored in the minds of listeners like sharpened blades, just waiting to be turned back on you. Did you hear what she said? A soft murmur in a servant's corridor? And just like that, a harmless comment becomes ammunition in a war you never meant to start. So now, you've stopped talking. Not completely. No, that would be suspicious. You've mastered the art of small nods, murmured compliments, polite laughter that never reaches your eyes. You say just enough to pass for charming, but never enough to be remembered. You've become a ghost in perfume. The queen, his wife, rarely speaks to you, but when she does, oh, it's a performance. A smile like a painted mask, words dipped in honey but hiding iron hooks. My dear, you look radiant today, she might say, her eyes never blinking. Is that the same gown you wore last week? You do not answer the question she's actually asking. You merely smile, offer a gentle bow, and say, Your Majesties. Taste always inspires me. See, silence, with sparkle. There are rules, unwritten ones. No interrupting, no loud laughs. Don't let your voice rise above a man's unless you're praising him. And absolutely, positively do not contradict the king, even when he's wrong, even when he forgets your name in front of the ambassadors, even when he jokes that you don't look quite as fresh as you did last spring. You smile, you nod, you swallow your dignity like bitter tea and keep your voice smooth, low, unthreatening, like music from far away. Because here's the thing, you understand now. Power listens, power watches, and power punishes. One mistress years ago, her name barely remembered, now made the mistake of laughing at a general's dull story in front of the queen. Just laughed, that was all. But someone said her laugh was too loud, too eager, too flirtatious. Within days, the general was promoted. She was sent to a convent for her health. The king never visited, gone, silenced, no ceremony, just a closed door and no one asking where she went. Historians still argue whether mistresses had real influence or if it was all a dangerous illusion. Some say the clever ones pulled the strings behind closed doors, shaping alliances with a whisper. Others argue they were pawns, beautiful distractions, who served until they broke and were replaced. The truth, you suspect it's both. The court is a stage, and you are both performer and prop. Silence becomes your script, and every pause, every breath, every carefully timed blink is a line you must deliver just right. Even alone, you rehearse. There are mirrors in your chamber, small and cloudy, but good enough. You practice smiling at just the right angle, practice gasping with quiet delight. You practice what you'll say when the ambassador's wife sneers at you again, and more importantly, what you won't say. You practice the art of nan-dash response, and when the king arrives at your door at night, half drunk, wanting company, but not conversation, you let your silence speak for you then too. You learn that moaning too loudly draws rumors. Being too cold earns punishment. There is a precise middle path, and you balance on it like a dancer in a war zone. Later, When he sleeps, you lay awake beside him, listening, always listening, to the clock ticking, to the guards shuffling in the hallway, to the sound of your own heartbeat reminding you are still here. For now, you sometimes receive letters, folded neatly, slipped under your plate at breakfast, left on the edge of your mirror. They are unsigned, sometimes from allies, sometimes from enemies pretending to be friends. Always written in careful, indirect phrases. Her Majesty inquired after you, again how flattering. Translation: the Queen is watching, or His Grace. The Chancellor seemed disappointed you missed his toast last night. Translation: you've offended someone important. Even your whispers have weight. A single comment about the King's faltering memory, repeated and reshaped through a dozen mouths, can return to you like a thunderclap. And you know this because once, you said something small to a maid, a simple, sighing remark about how tired the King had seemed. By dinner, he was raging, screaming about betrayal and spies. No one confessed. You both knew it didn't matter who told. You should never have spoken. Since then, you say less. Even with friends which you use the word lightly, or conversations are riddles. Did you see Lady Annalis's new necklace? You might ask. What you really mean is, has she gained the King's favor now? Should I be worried? She always did have excellent taste, your companion replies. What she really means is, watch your back, and so it goes. You live in a palace of unsaid things. Sometimes, you wonder what it would be like to shout, just once, to scream in the Great Hall, to throw your golden goblet across the room and yell, I am not your plaything. But that fantasy always ends the same way in your mind's eye. You're dragged away, locked in silence forever. Instead, you wake tomorrow and choose a different weapon. Your silence. Silence that listens. Silence that remembers. Silence that survives. Because in this world, only the foolish think speech is power. The wise know true power, walks quietly, and watches everyone else forget too. You wake again in the hush between dusk and nightfall. The sun has only just kissed the horizon, and shadows stretch long across the palace walls. But your mind isn't on the sunset. It's on the hidden drawer beneath the lacquered writing. Desk in your chamber's a place known only to you and the trembling maid who helped you install it. There, nestled behind a false panel, lies something more dangerous than any poisoned goblet or sharp-tongued rival. A book you don't reach for it yet. You wait. You always wait. Because timing is everything when it comes to forbidden knowledge. The court may seem to spin around gossip, silks, and smirks, but beneath all that, the real power pulses in paper and ink, and the wrong kind of ink can ruin you. Tonight, like so many nights before, you light a single taper and press your ear against the painted wood of the door. No movement, no whispers, just the faint scratching of rats in the walls, constant as time itself. You retrieve the book. It's not gilded or dramatic. There's no leather binding, no royal stamp. It's small and smuggled, covered in a simple cloth, corners curled from many anxious fingers. The script inside is cramped, hurried, written by someone who feared being caught even more than you. Do now. You open it gently, like a wound, and the smell of old pages rises. Dust, resin, maybe a trace of oil from the scribe's thumb. You inhale it like perfume. The subject, astronomy, or maybe philosophy, or medicine. It's hard to tell sometimes, because the languages blend: Arabic, Latin, Greek. You don't speak them fluently, not officially, but you've pieced together enough over the months, memorizing patterns, asking innocent questions, bribing a librarian with favors too delicate to name. You remember how it started. A whispered joke at a banquet. A court physician complaining about how little the king understood the body. Something about humors and balance and hot bile and uric list. Curious asked what he meant. He blinked at you, unsure if you were teasing or genuinely ignorant. Then he smiled, said, "If you'd like, Your Grace, I could bring you a short pamphlet on the subject." In French, of course. Of course. That first taste was harmless. A few diagrams, a strange story about how a person's personality depended on liver moisture. You laughed, tucked it away, and didn't think much of it until the second pamphlet came, then a book, then an ancient scroll translated by a Jewish scholar from Cordoba, and suddenly you found yourself staying awake after the king's visits, after the maids were dismissed, burning candle after candle over things you were never supposed to read. Historians still argue whether noble women were literate in this time. Some insist that royal mistresses were kept too ornamental, too soft, too pretty, to need anything as sharp as a sentence. Others believe many were more educated than they dared, show reading in secret, hiding letters, dictating replies through trusted scribes. The truth: you read because you were desperate. Not for poetry or prayer, but for strategy, for clues, for patterns of power. The political treatise you smuggled from the library last spring taught you more about survival than your governess ever did. And then came the letters. Those were the most dangerous. The book could be explained to curiosity, a gift, an heirloom from your uncle. But the letters, those had names. They had context. Some were from scholars, others from noblemen, too bold for their own good. A few came from other women wives of ambassadors, nuns with loose tongues, widows who remembered things better left buried. They wrote of factions, betrayals, secrets from other courts. One even included a detailed map of troop movements near the border. You still don't know whether it was real or a trap. You burned that one, and yet you kept reading, not because you were foolish, but because you realized something chilling. Men underestimated women who read, especially beautiful ones. They assumed you'd misuse the information, misinterpret it, maybe get bored. They were wrong. Each passage you absorbed became armor. When the king's chancellor tried to have your cousin arrested for theft, you quoted a line of property law from a hidden charter. When the Dowager Queen mocked your lineage, you referenced a lineage tree only available in the royal archive. When the king himself grumbled about trade routes, you proposed an alternate port access point that would reduce tariffs by a third. He laughed, then did it, then forgot where the idea came from, so you kept going. You read about poisons not to use them, but to recognize them. Belladonna, nightshade, hemlock. You knew their smells, their symptoms, which herbs masked them, which wines disguised their bitterness. One maid died from a cup of honeyed mead. You didn't. You'd skipped the mead. Something in its warmth had smelled wrong. You never said anything, just held her hand as she convulsed. The king called it a sad accident. Of course. There are still limits, though. There are books you dare not open. One bound in black vellum sits beneath the rest, untouched, rumored to be penned by a disgraced alchemist. It's said to describe how to control men through tinctures and moonlight. That's what the scribe said, anyway, before he was dismissed. You don't believe in spells, but you believe in ideas, and ideas you've learned are what truly terrify this court. Because once a woman begins to think truly thinks, she becomes unpredictable, uncontainable. She begins to ask, why can't she own land? Why can't she speak in council? Why must her influence be tied to how often a man visits her chambers? You think these things often now, but you don't write them down. Not ever. Because if anyone found your thoughts, if they found the book wrapped beneath your bed frame, or the notes you've hidden in the hem of your winter cloak, it wouldn't just be you who suffers. They'd punish your maid, your cousins, the scribes who brought you letters. Even the boy who fetches your candles might disappear, so you protect them all by keeping your voice inside your mind, or sometimes, softly, in code. You've started creating your own, a blend of old dialects and kitchen slang. You label books with odd phrases. Salted duck means astronomy. Winter. Plums means politics. Threadbare linen means dangerous. You test it by leaving a note in your drawer. If it vanishes, you'll know someone's reading you. So far, the note remains. And yet, every night, you feel that tension rising. You know it won't last forever. One evening, someone will knock louder than usual. Ask to search your chambers. Say it's for your safety. Say it's routine. And that will be the night you decide, burn it all, or run. But not tonight. Tonight, you read just a little further. The pages crinkle as you turn them. A candle flickers low. You trace a line of script with your finger, lips moving silently. It's about the stars, how their movements might affect fate. You smile faintly, not because you believe it, but because something about their cold, distant logic comforts you. The stars, at least, ask nothing. You know she's behind you before you see her. The scent gives her away first. Not roses, not lilies. Violets pressed into oil and steeped with something darker, something bitter beneath the sweetness. A court favorite, reserved for queens. You rise from your seat by the window, slowly, not too quickly, just enough to show respect without eagerness. You keep your back straight, hands lightly clasped, chin not too high, not too low. Every inch of you arranged like a painting. But you don't speak. Not yet. The queen hasn't spoken first. Her eyes settle on you. Brown, like chestnuts in winter. Sharp as cracked glass. But behind them, something unreadable, something old. You resist the urge to breathe too loudly. You learned early on that silence is safer when she's in the room. Is that embroidery? She asks. Her voice is low, pleasant, almost bored. You nod. A gift, Your Majesty, from Navarre. She smiles, but it doesn't reach her eyes. Navarre has good taste. A pause. Then she moves to the window, taking your place. The message is clear. You're dismissed, without being dismissed. But you don't leave. Not yet. Not until she says it. This is what it's like. Always. A dance on polished floors, with invisible blades beneath your feet. You're not rivals. Not officially. That would be improper. The queen has her position, her crown, her heirs. You have the king's attention. For now, point 1. History's polite lies. They say queens were gracious. They say they accepted their husbands' lovers, as politics demanded, raised their brows, made polite conversation, and sipped their wine as if nothing stung. But history is full of polite lies. In truth, queens were rarely indifferent. Some were icy, some vengeful. A few were quietly savage, in ways the court chroniclers dared not record. And why wouldn't they be? Youth, a mistress threatened everything they stood for. Their pride, their position, their very legacy. You were a mirror held up to their failures. The king's wandering eye wasn't just lust, it was public judgment. You are younger, more alive, perhaps cleverer, or perhaps simply easier to listen to. You are the proof that someone else can step into the center of power and be adored for it. So no, the queen does not love you, but neither does she move against you openly too. The most dangerous smile. It's strange how kindness can feel more dangerous than cruelty. The first time she complimented your gown, you almost fainted. You hadn't even noticed she'd entered the salon, her steps so soft, her voice like silk brushing marble. Such color suits you, she had said. It must be hard to find dyes that vivid in this region. You murmured thanks, bowing slightly. Only later did it hit you. The dyes weren't local. They'd come from Venice, via a discreet merchant. You'd told no one except your maid and the king. So how had she known? And what message was she sending? You burned the dress the next morning, not because you feared her well, not just that, but because you understood something vital. When the queen knows what you wear, who you speak to, where your fabrics come from, she is watching, not in anger, not with jealousy, with calculation. She doesn't scream. She doesn't accuse. She simply collects information. And that is more terrifying than anything else. 3 mirror games and morning calls. There are rituals to this relationship. Unwritten rules etched into every movement. When you pass each other in the gardens, you must curtsy not too deeply. She will nod, perhaps pause to ask after your health. You must answer with vague elegance. I am well, Your Majesty. I hope the lilies are thriving in the north beds. When she invites you to her chamber for tea as she did last week, you must go, even if you dread it. Even if you know it's not about tea. She poured it herself, a rare gesture. You sat on the cushioned stool near her knees, while she remained upright in her armchair, spine like iron. She asked about your family, your uncle, your cousin's marriage. She mentioned your late mother's beauty. You resemble her, she said. You thanked her again, and then she set her teacup down and said, Do you read poetry? Yes, Your Majesty. Good. I think it teaches women how to feel, without acting. That's useful, don't you think? You didn't answer? That was the right move. She liked that dot for the power of being ignored some days. She doesn't look at you at all. At a banquet, you might sit 3 chairs down. She speaks with the Duchess beside her, never turning your way. She laughs at the Duke's toast, even when the joke is clearly about the king and his newest gift to you, a pearl necklace worn only once to the untrained eye. It seems like indifference, but you've learned that being ignored is its own form of control. When the queen speaks to someone, they feel seen, elevated, important. When she avoids someone, that person begins to fade. The court gossips notice. The ladies-in-waiting notice. Even the king, though he'd never admit it, feels the chill. And when he sees her pretending not to see you, he starts to wonder if perhaps you are less than, he thought. So you study how to reappear, not dramatically, not with jewels or songs, but with whispers, with subtle gestures. A well-timed compliment to the queen's favored lady. A donation to a convent she once visited. A handkerchief embroidered in her childhood colors accidentally dropped near her maid. You don't grovel, you remind, and slowly, she begins to see you again. 5. A curious historical case. Here's a real historical note. In the court of Louis XV, Madame de Pompadour, the king's mistress, managed to maintain a cordial, even affectionate relationship with Queen Marie Lecesca. How she stayed within her lane. She flattered the queen. She presented herself not as a rival, but as a courtier, a servant of the crown. But was that affection real? Letters suggest something colder. The queen referred to her as that woman in private notes. She once wrote, She keeps her hands clean, but the king's soul is stained. Still, there was no public feud. Why? Because queens know the cost of open war, especially with women who the king adores. And mistresses know that keeping the queen's favor artificially is worth more than diamonds. 6. The open secret there are rumors. There always are. Some say the queen once had a lover herself, a poet, or perhaps a foreign ambassador. No one speaks of it openly, but there are old paintings that seem too charged, too intimate. Letters stored away in locked cabinets. Maybe it's gossip. Maybe it's truth. But if it is true, if the queen herself has known love outside the king's shadow, then perhaps that's why she watches you with such quiet fury. Not because she hates you, but because she remembers being you. And what came after? 7. The final encounter. I'll remember this moment forever. A cold afternoon. The king had gone hunting. You'd received word of a letter from Spain, an alliance proposal that might affect your cousin's estate. You were trying to think it through when the queen entered your chambers. Uninvited. She dismissed your maid with a glance. Then she closed the door. No greetings. No pleasantries. She looked at you, just looked, for a long time, and then said, One day, he will grow bored of you, or he will marry someone else, or you will bear him a son, and that son will be taken from you. You opened your mouth. Nothing came out. She stepped closer. Do you think they will remember you kindly? You felt your pulse thudding in your ears. I think, she said, adjusting the cuff of her sleeve, they will remember your perfume and the scandal, but not your mind. Then she turned. At the door, she paused. Choose your friends carefully, especially the ones who smile too much. And then she was gone. And now, you stare out the window of your chamber. The stars begin to blink awake. Somewhere in the palace, music stirs. You know she's in the ballroom tonight, dressed in midnight blue, her crown set just so, her expression carved from calm stone. She will dance once. She will smile twice, and she will remember everything. The queen doesn't need to raise her voice. She is power, sitting very, very still. And you live beneath her gaze, every hour, every day, until the day you don't. You think the candle is out? You lie very still beneath the silks, holding your breath, letting the stillness of the room settle around you like powder. The flame sputtered. A minute ago your maid pinched it carefully, with fingers wrapped in damp cloth, and now only smoke curls in its place. Darkness, at last, but not silence. You hear them, whispers, footsteps, a soft clatter maybe, a dish in the corridor, or a chamber pot, 2 doors down. You hope it's not someone right outside. You don't sleep with your back to the door anymore. Too many times, you've woken to a cough, a creak, the unmistakable drag of a slipper across the stone tiles. You never see anyone. That's the worst part. They know how to move like shadows, like thoughts, and they never open the door fully. They don't have to. A few inches is enough. Just enough to listen, to count your breaths, to know whether you're alone or not. 1. The illusion of space. They gave you your own room, not the grandest one. Of course, that's for visiting princesses, but a respectable chamber with embroidered curtains and a carved bed frame. It smells like lavender and polished oak. The fire always crackles just enough. There's a dressing table, a chair no one uses, a mirror covered in velvet at night, and a wardrobe that seems to hold more secrets than gowns, but it's not yours. Not really, because the walls don't belong to you. The servants don't serve you, they serve the crown, and every candle stub, every cup of warmed wine, every folded blanket passed through the hands of someone who answers not to your name, but to the king's or the queen's. Your chamber door has a lock. It doesn't work. Or rather, it works when no one important wants in, and someone always wants in. Point 2. Eyes. Behind curtains, there are spies who don't look like spies. The girl who brushes your hair hums the same lullaby each night, but she was placed here by the chief steward, who reports to the royal council. The boy who carries your letters has unusually fine boots for a page. The woman who brings your morning pastries speaks 5 languages and once lived in Istanbul. Why is she here? Why does she never blink when she asks, "Did His Majesty visit last night?" The answer matters, not because they care, because they record. There's a soft book hidden somewhere, maybe under the senior chamberlain's bed, where your comings and goings are quietly inked. Who entered your room? When? For how long? What they wore? What was heard? What wasn't said? You are a chapter in progress. Every night, a new page, and yet the ink never dries, because the truth changes with whoever tells it. 3. Whispers through the walls. They tell you the palace walls are thick. They are not. Not where it counts. There are little cracks, where the tapestries don't quite hang right. Slits in the paneling where the wood swells in the winter and shrinks in the summer. A misplaced nail, a rotten beam, a forgotten servant's corridor that runs just behind your headboard. You once heard a full conversation through the floorboards. Not a loud one, a whisper between 2 pages in the gallery below. They spoke about your necklace, how It had belonged to the king's mother. How it was cursed. How no one should ever wear it in bed. You wore it anyway. You were young then. Braver. That night, it snapped while you turned in your sleep. Pearls scattered onto the floor like hail. You still find them in the dark sometimes, under the rug, near the legs of your bed. They are your only proof that the room listens and bites back. 4. A historians murmur in the glittering courts of France, England, and Austria. Mistresses were given private wings, so the records say. But private is a relative term. A document from 1762 reveals that Madame du Barry, Louis XV's last mistress, had her chamber checked by palace guards, hourly even at night, ostensibly for her safety. In practice, it was surveillance, a coded form of imprisonment. 1 foot wrong, 1 hidden visitor, 1 whispered confession, and her luxurious bed could become a trap. In Catherine the Great's court, lovers were escorted to the Empress's rooms by guards, then watched discreetly from the corridor while they were inside. The goal, protection, of course, but protection and spying are sometimes indistinguishable. 5. The king's late visits. You know the sound of his footsteps. They are different from the others. He doesn't shuffle, he strides, but with care. 1 heel clicks more loudly than the other, boot worn uneven from riding. You feel the pressure change in the hallway when he's coming. The air thickens, the hearth crackles louder. The candles seem to tremble just a little. Sometimes, he comes just before dawn. Sometimes, you're asleep when the door opens. Other times, you wait. When he enters, everything stills. Even your own fear, because when he is there, the others disappear. For a while, no guards, no servants, no queen, no whispers. Just him and you, and whatever warmth or coldness he carries that night. But when he leaves, the eyes return. Sometimes the door doesn't close all the way. 6. A quirky danger did, you know. In the court of Spain, under Philip IV, a mistress was once punished not for adultery, but for snoring. Or at least, that's how the story goes. The tale says a maid reported that she could hear the mistress breathing heavily in her sleep, which was used as evidence that the woman was drunk, vulgar, and unfit for proximity to the king. She was sent to a convent. Whether it's true or not, doesn't matter, because it could be true. And in courts like these, possibility is as powerful as proof. That's why you practice stillness, even in sleep. You lie with your ankles crossed, just so, your arms tucked neatly. You never murmur names, never speak in dreams, because someone is always listening, and even your dreams are not safe. 7. When the doors don't close tonight, the candle sputters. Again. You lie there, wrapped in a blanket that smells like orange peel and rose water. The sheets are smooth, too smooth, maybe, for comfort. You long for the rough linen of your childhood, the one that scratched your legs and made you feel real. But here, everything is soft and cold. You turn your head slightly. The door, you notice, is open by an inch. Not much, just enough for air to pass through, just enough for light from the corridor to slice across the floor. Someone left it like that, deliberately, not a mistake. A message. You think about rising, closing it. But what would that prove? You'd only show you noticed, that you were rattled, and then tomorrow, at breakfast, someone would mention that you seemed tired, that your eyes were red, that perhaps you need chamomile or a new pillow, that your nerves are fraying. You stay still, you breathe slowly, you listen for footsteps, and wait, because your bedroom is not yours. It never was, and as long as you are mistress to a king, it never will be. You feel the weight of silence settle over your lap, not the silence of nightfall, or of a still room. This is different, thicker, suspicious, as if the air itself is watching you, wondering what you might say, or what you might be hiding. It begins, the moment your fingers tremble at breakfast. Too little appetite, or maybe too much. a changed face in the mirror, a subtle swell in your chest. You know what they suspect. You feel it in the way your maid ties your corset just a little looser, in the way the queen's gaze lingers an extra beat. The court physician has asked casually, politely, if you'd like a tonic for your nerves, and you begin to ask yourself, is it true? Am I pregnant? And if you are, is this salvation, or is this a sentence? 1. A dangerous gift. A royal mistress is always walking a tightrope. Too little affection from the king, and you're forgotten. Too much, and you provoke envy. But if you bear a child, especially a son, then your life changes entirely. You are no longer just a favorite. You become something bigger, more dangerous. You become a threat. You might be raised, you might be destroyed, because that baby growing inside you, it isn't just flesh and blood, it's currency, a tool, a wedge, a pawn in dynastic power struggles. And unlike your gowns, perfumes, or whispered poems, this currency lasts, it breathes, and it can inherit. Point 2. Your body, not your own you. Notice it most in the way people look at your stomach, not your face, not your gown, just below your ribs, like they're measuring you. You feel the eyes of the court, men and women alike, trying to calculate. Has your walk changed? Are your ankles swelling? Are your breasts fuller? Is your color different today? There is no privacy in pregnancy, and certainly none for a mistress. From the moment the rumor begins, you are studied like a relic. Every cough is examined, every yawn interpreted. You can't even refuse wine at dinner without starting whispers. If you are pregnant, you won't be the first, and you won't be the last, to regret it. Point 3. Historical whispers. The bastard prince in the court of Louis XIV, his mistress Madame de Montespan bore him 7 children. 7. She was beloved, powerful, feared, and eventually replaced. But what made her position so potent was not her beauty, not even her wit. It was her womb. Each child gave her more leverage, more access, more status. The king legitimized their sons, gave them titles, let them marry into high nobility. And as their mother, she held the invisible strings of influence, until she didn't, when new rumors, darker ones, of witchcraft and poison swirled around her. Her very fertility was turned against her. Her too many children became a scandal. Her past births became evidence of moral corruption. The same court that had celebrated her as fruitful now condemned her as monstrous, because power through pregnancy is a borrowed sword, and it cuts both ways. 4. The midwives and the spies. Once you're confirmed to be with child, you no longer sleep alone, but not out of care, out of surveillance. The queen's women might start to visit you for tea. Old midwives, previously retired, are summoned back to court. You hear the shuffle of their feet behind your door at night. Their hands are gentle, but their eyes report everything. Did you flinch? Were you weeping? Did you hide a letter? Your meals are tasted, not just for poison, but to see what cravings you're satisfying. Even your chamber pot isn't private anymore. The king may smile when he sees you, but you wonder if he's already planning what to do if the child is not a son, or if the child isn't his. There are whispers. They say in another palace and other country, a mistress once gave birth to a baby with red hair. When the king's was black, she vanished a week later. The child was never seen. 5. Quirky tidbit. The pregnancy portraits in 18th century Russia. Pregnant mistresses were painted often with a hand resting gently on their belly, a silk ribbon tied just beneath their bust line, not out of sentiment, but as a message, a visual claim. This child is his. Look at me. Look at my body. It wasn't about maternal glow, it was propaganda. Because the moment the mistress began to show, her body became a banner, a political poster. And everyone knew, if she could birth a son, her bloodline might just nestle itself into the throne's shadow, forever. 6. Labor is a battlefield. You lie on the linen sheets, panting, soaked in sweat. The room is too crowded, too many people, too many strangers. Labor is not quiet here. Midwives murmur. Courtiers peek. Someone reads prayers aloud, even though you never asked them to. And worst of all, you are not in control. They say you must be examined. They say a noblewoman from the council has been sent to witness the birth. She is not your friend. You clutch the sides of the bed frame and scream into the cushions. But the screams do not scare anyone. They are expected, because this is not your pain to hold in private. It belongs to the court, to the king, to the record. And if something goes wrong, if the baby dies, or you bleed too long, or your womb never recovers, you may be quietly moved to a country estate, where the gardens are lovely and the doors locked from the outside. 7. And then, silence. 5th, the child lives. There will be a christening, perhaps. A small title, a pension, maybe even land. But your place, it's still uncertain, because now, they don't need you anymore. They have your son, or daughter. They have what they wanted from your body. And as you sit, weeks later, in a cold chair staring out the window, while your breasts ache with unused milk, and your hair falls out in clumps, you'll wonder, was the child worth it? Was any of it? And when a younger girl arrives at court, fresh-faced, witty, gifted a necklace by the King Yule, see her glance at your stomach, the faint curve remaining. She will smile at you, and you will smile back, because you know she doesn't understand the game yet, but she will. And it always starts the same way, with a missed period and a whisper. You don't even notice it at first. The change is gentle, like a slow, steady breeze shifting direction. No sudden gusts, no storm clouds, just fewer glances from across the room, fewer questions about your comfort, less laughter when you speak. The king still smiles at you sometimes, but his hand doesn't linger, and that laugh, the one that used to burst so easily from his chest at your jokes, now comes politely. If it comes at all, something is missing. Something's gone cold, and you know, deep in your stomach, that you are falling. Not all at once, not yet. But gravity has taken hold, and grace is a slippery thing. 1. The echo of laughter. That's not meant for you. It begins with another voice. High-pitched, clever, a little too loud in the corridor near the royal library. He's with her. You can't see her. Not yet. But you hear them. She says something witty. He laughs, and not the way he laughs with ministers or generals. No, this laugh is warm, indulgent. It's the sound you used to make him make, and your heart sinks not with anger, with understanding. You remember what it felt like when you were the new girl, the teasing, the blushing, the silk dresses sent without asking, the poems, the invitations to private concerts, the way other women began to notice your presence and flinch when you entered. You remember that power, and you remember how easy it was to believe it would last. But at DOESN, single quotes, not here, not in court. 2. The quiet removal. Your favorite mirror disappears from your chamber. No one mentions it. Then the court artist stops coming to sketch your face. The harpist who used to practice in your end has moved down the hall. The velvet cushions on your balcony you're reading. Balcony are replaced with less soft ones, cheaper, subtler. Your dresses arrive late. The perfumes change. The chambermaids are slow to respond. You ask for a certain wine, and they inform you. The cellar's empty. You request your riding horse, and the stable master hesitates. You've been moved off the schedule, my lady, he says softly. It isn't a fall. It's an ERASURE.3. Historical whisper. Lady Barbara Palmer of England, the favorite mistress of Charles II of England, Lady Barbara Palmer reigned in scandal and silk. She was bold, demanding, daring. But when new women arrived at court, softer, more subtle, her brilliance became a burden. She was called vulgar, too loud, too proud. The same confidence that had once entranced the king was now used to shame. or she fell from grace, not because she failed, but because she had shown too long. And when the king replaced her, she was granted a pension and banished from court. She had children by him. She had power, but none of it mattered anymore, because when the king's gaze shifts, the entire world tilts. 4. The new favorites. Should you see her finally? She's pretty, yes, but not remarkably so. Not more than you, but she's new, and that alone makes her dangerous. She walks where you used to, stands where you used to wait. She carries herself lightly, as if unaware of the web she's weaving. But you see it, you know it, you've done it yourself. She smiles at you across the dining hall. You smile back, polite, controlled, but you can feel the eyes on both of you, whose smile is brighter, whose jewels are newer, whose favor is higher. It doesn't matter what you wear, or how you walk, or what clever comment you offer at court gatherings. You're no longer the flame, you're the wick that's burning out. 5. Small humiliation. Arrive late to the masquerade, not by choice. Your dress was delivered wrong, then corrected late. By the time you step into the ballroom, everyone has seen her costume, her mask, her daring little emerald necklace, the very one the king once promised to you. The music shifts when she enters a room. You notice the king leans forward now, not toward you, but to catch her voice. The other noblewomen, who used to whisper to you for favor, now turn to her. And worst of all, you have to pretend you don't notice. Pretend you're above it. Pretend it was always meant to be temporary, even though your stomach twists. Even though you wake in the middle of the night clutching your sheets and wondering what now, because there's no job description for a former mistress, just silence and exile. 6. Your exit. Strategy. Some mistresses go quietly. They accept a country estate, a pension, a polite letter of farewell. They take their children and retire, painting themselves as noble women who knew their place. Others resist. They cry. They threaten. They try to speak to the king one last time. They write letters that go unanswered. They ask favors from old allies and find doors suddenly closed. A few turn vengeful. Secrets slip. Scandals emerge. Hidden love letters, past conversations, dangerous knowledge. But even these weapons rarely restore favor, because once the king is bored, there's little left to fight for, and the new girls, smiling, glowing, admired, has everything to lose. You've already lost it. All that's left is how you'll survive it. 7. A soft landing. If you're lucky, the queen never liked you much anyway. She might permit you to live quietly. She might even allow your children to be raised at court. If you're luckier still, you'll remarry a nobleman in need of royal ties. Someone who doesn't mind a woman with a past. Someone who sees you not as a discarded mistress, but as a woman who once stood at the very heart of power. And if you're unlucky, you may spend your days pacing gardens you don't own, in gowns you no longer like, remembering jokes that used to make a king laugh, and nights you'll lie in silence and imagine the sound of his footsteps approaching someone else's door. You don't hear it when the door closes, because it doesn't slam. It never slams. That's not how court ends. Not for someone like you. Not for a royal mistress. Instead, the ending comes in whispers, and in silence, and in a long, slow erasure until you're nothing more than a name people avoid saying too loudly. You once wore jewels that outshone the chandeliers. You once laughed in the king's ear and made ministers shift nervously. Now, your chamber is being prepared for someone else, and you have 3 choices: exile, convent, or death. 1. Exile. A palace made of distance. You are given a villa, or perhaps an old family estate in the countryside. Sometimes it's called a gift, a retirement, a gesture of goodwill. But you know better. It's exile dressed in velvet. There are rules. You may not write to the king. You may not travel to court. Your name is no longer spoken at the table. Even your closest friends, the ones who used to giggle beside you after banquets, suddenly forget how to hold a quill. You are a threat, not because of what you've done, but because of what you know. And so they send you away. Imagine this, a countryside estate, lush with vines, the sound of cicadas instead of violins, dinner served by servants who used to serve your cousin, a bed large enough for one, letters from no one. You pace the gardens like a widow ex, except your love isn't dead. He just no longer cares if you exist. You think about what to do next. Raise your children, if they stayed with you. Read books, if you still have the stomach for poetry. Paint, embroider. Wait, for what? You don't know. Because the door behind you didn't just close, it locked, too. Convent, the gilded prison of piety not. Everyone gets a villa, some are guided toward religious life. The court calls it penitence. The church calls it cleansing. You call it what it is, a cage in silk robes. A convent is quiet, safe, structured, but it is also suffocating. You rise early, you pray long, you kneel until your knees bruise. There is no gossip, no perfume, no touch. The woman who once shared the king's bed now shares a stone cell with candle wax and silence. And no matter how often you pray, the nuns still glance at you sideways. They know your name, they know your sign, and in their eyes, you are not a sister. You are a scandal with a rosary. 3. Death, sometimes ordered, sometimes chosen. There are stories that don't make the records. Only whispers, only cold, cautious nods. Sometimes, a mistress knows too much. Sometimes, she's involved in politics. Sometimes, she simply won't go quietly, and the court, Well, the court knows how to handle problems. Poison in a pear, a slip on whetstone, a sudden fever, a stillborn child, followed by a grieving mother who never wakes up. No one investigates. No one asks questions, because they already know the answer. Some mistresses choose death themselves, not because they are weak, but because they have been used up and tossed aside like paper burned at both ends. And there is dignity, sometimes, in choosing the final door yourself. 4. Historical whisper. Madame de Montespan, the brilliant, sharp-tongued, devastatingly powerful mistress of Louis XIV. She ruled the court like a storm, gave birth to 7 of his children, changed fashion, hosted poets and priests, and then one day he looked elsewhere. She was forced out, accused of being tied to poisoners, of black masses, of sorcery. She denied it. She begged. She cried. But the court smiled politely and escorted her to exile. She spent her remaining years in prayer, lonely, forgotten, and yet her name still echoes. Not because she died with power, but because she once had it so fully, and because the world punished her for ever daring to hold it. 5. Your children. If you're allowed to keep them, not every mistress is allowed to keep her children. Some are taken to be raised properly, trained as nobles, taught to forget the woman who bore them. They call the queen mother, and you become a tale they hear in whispers. Your real mother was a lady once. If you do raise them, it's in silence. You teach them the dangers of laughter, of love, of loyalty. You teach them that power is not a throne, needs a leash. And when they ask why the world turned its back on you, you smile and say nothing, because the truth is too bitter to speak. 6. The court forgets quickly. You think your story mattered, but the moment you vanish, the halls fill with new names, new dresses, new laughter. The courtiers who once bowed to you now bow to someone else. The poets who praised your beauty now write sonnets for another. Even the king forgets, or pretends to, and in the end, all your power, all your charm, all your sacrifices are reduced to a line in a letter. A former mistress, removed for reasons of discretion, sent away. The chandeliers still sparkle, but you are no longer invited to the light. 7. So what did you actually do all day? You danced with fire, every moment, every breath, every smile, perfectly timed, every touch, calculated, every silence, weaponized. You had power, but it was borrowed. You were seen, but only when useful. You were adored, but never safe. And when the music stopped, you weren't offered a seat. You were shown the door, with silk, gloves, and deadly grace. Exile, convent, or death. None of them gentle, none of them deserved. All of them part of the cost, because to be a royal mistress was never truly about love, or beauty, or pleasure. It was about being used, brilliantly, violently, briefly. And then being forgotten. You lie awake again tonight. The silk canopy sways gently in the breeze, and your name whispered only behind closed doors is echoing in your own head. Will they remember you? Will they speak of you centuries from now, in halls of power, in books? Or will even your gravestone be lost, overgrown, and forgotten, like a discarded ornament in the palace gardens? Here, memory is a currency, and you're not just trying to survive the court, you're trying to be remembered by it, too. Fame that isn't yours, living in someone else's legacy. The queen has portraits, poets, and priests who immortalize her. You're a footnote, a shadow. When the royal artist sketches the court, he avoids your eyes. When the official records are written, your name is soft if not erased. Even the gifts you receive from the king are branded with his name, not yours. The pearl necklace, commissioned by His Majesty. The estate you were gifted, signed under his royal will. Everything about your presence is made to look like an extension of his benevolence, not your own agency. You're there, but you're not acknowledged. 3. Controlled stories. What history is allowed to say you learn early? The record keepers are loyal not to truth, but to power. Some mistresses in history, like Madame de Pompadour, were remembered only because they wielded vast political influence and surrounded themselves with artists, architects, philosophers, but others, like dozens from the Ottoman harem, the Russian court, or Tang Dynasty China, were buried twice, once in the ground, and once in the silence of official memory. Even your letters, if found, might be burned. Your journals seized. A single scandalous rumor could be cemented as your biography, while the complexity of your life gets boiled down to, she pleased the king. And you know, if you die in disgrace, they'll write you out of the story entirely. 4. The power of symbols, statues, nicknames, and silent accolades. But still, you try. You wear the colors of rebellion: crimson emerald, ink black velvet. You drop coded phrases in public speeches. You host salons where artists read poems you paid for under false names. You ask a court painter to hide your likeness in the background of his painting, a gesture, a silhouette, a glance toward the king. Some mistresses are never remembered by name, but by nicknames. The king's jewel, the panther, the sable widow. These fragments, half myth and half memory, are the only echoes that remain after the courtiers move on. Even a hairpin left behind could outlast your written name, and you're constantly planting artifacts of yourself in the margins, hoping one will stick. 5. A strange immortality. Gossip, as history whispers, are sticky. Sometimes, you realize it's not official records that keep someone alive in history. Gossip, a servant's scandalous letter, a rival's cruel verse, a diplomat's memoir that exaggerates your accent, your perfume, the shape of your eyes. Centuries later, that gossip becomes fact. Imagine being remembered not for your thoughts, or wit, or strength, but because someone once called you the fox-faced temptress in a jealous poem. And still, it's better than being forgotten, so you feed it. Just enough mystery, just enough drama. You disappear for 3 days during a festival enough to start rumors. You cry publicly once enough to seem human. You drop a cryptic quote about the queen into a passing conversation. You're not writing history, you're seating it 6. Scholars at war, how they'll argue about you later you know. If you're lucky, they'll debate you. Not love you, not admire you, but debate you. Was she the real power behind the throne? Was she just a pawn? Was her influence destructive or liberating? Did she wield sexuality as a weapon, or was she merely surviving? You imagine scholars 400 years from now arguing in candlelit rooms over your motivations. They'll read your censored letters. They'll analyze your gowns. They'll try to determine your role in history, as if you were a puzzle. They won't ask how tired you were, how afraid, how often you stared out the window wondering if any of this was worth it. But they'll argue, and somehow, that's enough. 7. Final thoughts. You live. If they speak your name there. As a ritual, some old noblewomen taught you a whisper of superstition. They say if someone speaks your name after you're gone, your soul flickers for a moment, weightless, just above their lips, and so you spend your life in secrets, and silk, in schemes, and softness. Not just for the king but for immortality. Not everyone who wears the crown of mistress gets a monument, but some, some leave echoes. A name on a dusty document, a lock of hair in a hidden drawer, a smile captured in a painting that no one understands, a legacy tangled in rumor, love, power, and fear. You may never be queen, but you might be eternal. All you need is someone, someday, to ask, who was she? And in that moment, you live again.